Not a day goes by where there's some story that makes me eternally grateful for the Constitution. The founding fathers understood what was going on in Europe and said, we must have a written document that says y'all can't do certain things, government. The people can do certain things. My friends, I give you one of the most horrifying stories I've seen yet in the whole COVID lockdown, but it's happening in Europe. Video of racist police beating puts Macron under the cosh. The footage was shocking in its brutality as Michael Zeckler, a black music producer, cowered in the entrance of his building that houses his recording studio in an upmarket district of Paris. He was beaten by 3 policemen who allegedly called him dirty N-word. His crime, he was not wearing a mask. Wow. It's not the first time we've seen a story like this. You may have seen the viral video, I think it was from Australia, of a woman who had a medical exemption for not having to wear a mask for breathing issues, and a cop just brutally assaulted her. This is the kind of thing you can expect when you get authoritarian lockdowns. You see, the police in Europe, they haven't sworn an oath to anything, really. I mean, maybe they swear an oath to something. In the United States, we swear an oath to the Constitution. My understanding is that cops do. Maybe they don't. I know armed service personnel do. But most of us should have an oath to the Constitution. That is the document that guarantees the rights of the citizens, that the government shall not infringe upon them. I would, look, there are leftists who are calling for abolishing the Constitution. No joke. In the New Republic, it's a prominent leftist publication. That's scary because then you'll get this. They can't do it to us right now. They can try. They've done it in some places. No, we won't stand for it. They say from the Sunday Times, the incident viewed by more than 13 million people on a social media outlet called Loopsider reverberated through France this weekend, adding to concerns about the behavior of a police force that appears out of control and the apparent unwillingness of President Emmanuel Macron's government to rein it in. I don't see this as an issue of police brutality. I mean, it is, but first and foremost, it's an issue of fascistic authoritarianism. What did these leftists think was going to happen as they called for more and more of this? In the U.S., we are having lockdowns, and they're a violation of our constitutional rights. The Supreme Court recently ruled in favor of religious services in New York City, saying, Cuomo, you can't lock down churches. The Constitution does not allow you to do so. It was really funny, actually. I think it was Gorsuch, or however you pronounce the name, who issued an opinion that said there's no world in which the Constitution blocks religious services from being open, but allows salons and, banks and stores from being open. It's a really, really good point. But here's what the Sunday Times says. Among those expressing outrage were the French football internationals. I'm not super concerned about that. As the outcry continued this weekend, Macron described the images as shameful for all of us and said his government would have to find a way of restoring public confidence in the police. His comments, posted on Facebook, came as up to 500,000 people held protests in Paris and dozens of others across France yesterday. Although most passed off peacefully, police in the capital used tear gas and water cannon to disperse crowds near the Place de la Bastille. The harrowing video of the 7-minute beating emerged during an uncomfortable week for the government that had been expected to be dominated by Macron's announcement of the relaxation of France's month-long COVID-19 lockdown, including the long-awaited reopening yesterday of non-essential shops. Well, over in London, 150 people have been arrested. Is this what people want with the lockdowns? Just to be locked in your home and the government can beat and arrest people and you can't protest anymore? This is what Europe gets with no constitution. The Hill says more than 150 people were arrested on Saturday during an anti-lockdown protest in London, the Metropolitan Police announced. The Met said the arrests were made for breaching coronavirus regulations, assaulting a police officer, and possessing of drugs. Law enforcement added that officers made several attempts to prevent people from gathering and to urge people to go home. The Met warned on Friday that the protests break the law, adding that it has had a robust policing plan in place for the weekend. That's right. In London, you're not legally allowed to protest. In the U.S., we have a Constitution and a First Amendment. But I said this the other day, and I'll say it again. The First Amendment says you have a right to peaceably assemble. That's it. you have a right to peaceably assemble. Well, I choose to peaceably assemble to, mow my lawn with friends or to have a drink. It doesn't matter what I'm talking about. The government can't stop it. They'll try, and they're losing in many cases. The Hill goes on to say, quote, today's enforcement action is a direct result of those individuals deliberately breaking the law and at times targeting our officers with aggression and causing disruption to the road network, Chief Superintendent Stuart Bell said in a statement. The arrests come as many countries in Europe have seen spikes in COVID cases with the approach of the colder months. Countries such as Germany and Italy have clamped down on restrictions in recent weeks ahead of Christmas. England is currently in a month-long lockdown that began November 5th with closed non-essential businesses and allowed people to leave their homes only for work and other necessities. Officials plan to lift those restrictions on December 2nd and enforce restrictions specific to certain regions. However, more than 55 million people would still remain under tighter restrictions, the BBC reported this week, with London and the Liverpool City region being in the second highest tier. More than 1.6 million coronavirus infections have been reported in the UK since the pandemic began. According to data from Johns Hopkins University, more than 58,000 people have died. You know what's funny? Johns Hopkins University newsletter put out a story saying that COVID deaths were being exaggerated, and then within about 4 or 5 days, they retracted it, claiming it was incorrect. But the doctor who put the study together said, no, it's not. I did my research, and it's correct. I wonder if this faulty data or disputed data is the sole reason why they're doing all of this. Johns Hopkins has been the one tracking the principal COVID numbers. So now what happens? Well, let me tell you something sad. I saw a post from Carl Benjamin, a.k.a. Sargon of Akkad. If you have not followed his new show, you can check out his Lotus Eaters podcast. Shout out to Sargon. But he posted something on Parler. It was a couple guys with a wheelbarrow yelling, "Bring out your dead." And what they had was pub signs. They were destroying the businesses. And they were saying, and what the meme said was that some of these pubs are hundreds of years old. You see, we don't really have that all that much in the U.S. We do have old establishments, but they're really rare. In Europe and the UK, there are bars that have been open for like 1,000 years. Isn't that crazy? I went to one where it was like you could actually see the old like brick and hay mud that they used to build it. And then they reinforced it and built over it. It's kind of crazy, like super old. I don't know how old it was, but there's like buildings there from like the 1300s or even earlier. They're being destroyed. Now, the buildings will still exist, I guess, but these businesses are being destroyed. And for what? This is the wrong move. Well, I don't want to get too much into business stuff because I might do another segment on that. The main issue is we're seeing the V for Vendetta-esque authoritarian lockdowns where they're going on TV saying, here's why you need us. And people just fall in line and believe it. I'm not one to normally do videos about police brutality. I'm not a big proponent of Black Lives Matter in the sense that the organization is rather communist, self-described, and they want to disrupt the nuclear family. I'm not a fan. But I don't like police brutality, and I'm willing to call it out where I can. And what we're seeing right now is draconian lockdowns. I've said this before, but I want you to take this to heart and tell people, remind them of this. When we read those novels, when we watched those movies about a nightmare dystopia, there's no reality in which the authoritarian government just exists, just one day poofs into existence. They say Donald Trump is a fascist and all that, but he's not doing any fascistic things. They are, and they have an excuse. COVID is their excuse. Any authoritarian would always have an excuse. Maybe Trump will use the excuse of widespread voter fraud to overturn the results of the election and take the White House for another 4 years. Possible. We'll see how it plays out. But what we're seeing with COVID, beating of people for not wearing masks, it's going to get worse. I don't think it'll get better. They're saying that they're going to be lifting these restrictions. Okay, so maybe, but Joe Biden said we're going to have a dark winter. Joe Biden said that he's going to follow the science. And Joe Biden's advisor says 6-week national lockdown. I think most people, regardless of who you voted for, should be crossing your fingers and hoping Donald Trump somehow finds a way to win, lest we find ourselves in these positions. In Pennsylvania, when an unconstitutional law, and a judge said it was likely unconstitutional, but they didn't rule on the merits yet, when this law was struck down by the Supreme Court, Democrats cheered. The law obviously flies in the face of the Constitution. Over time, our norms and rules have been eroded. And what I'm worried about is that the Constitution has become Swiss cheese as of late, with these lockdowns especially, and especially with laws around 2A. At what point do we just forget the Constitution exists and it becomes more of a formality? That's what worries me. I hope that people start reasserting their rights, uphold the Constitution, and guarantee that we never get anything like this. But it's already starting to happen. And worse still, regular people who believe this stuff and are paranoid and delusional, wearing masks, like screaming at people. I'm not saying it's wrong to wear a mask. I'm saying just describing these people who are nuts. These people are beating they're beating people and they're enforcing these social policies just because they're drone-like and insane. Scary stuff, man. No, whatever. I'll leave it there. I got a couple more segments coming up in a few minutes. Stick around and I will see you all shortly.